On the morning of May 19, 1536, Anne Boleyn stepped forward to face her fate, declaring, "I am come hither to die." These opening words marked the beginning of her final speech atop the execution platform constructed inside the Tower of London. However, few people understand that this carefully crafted address, spoken with dignity and remarkable calm, was not her original intended statement. Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII's second spouse and England's first queen to face execution, stood accused of unfaithfulness, forbidden relations with her brother, and betraying the crown. These accusations were, as nearly every contemporary historian and many people of her time recognized, fabricated for political purposes and completely false. Nevertheless, as she faced the small assembly gathered within the tower's confines, Anne chose not to declare her innocence. Her last public words were measured, commending the king as a kind and merciful ruler, and requesting prayers for her eternal soul. This restraint stemmed not from fear or acknowledgement of guilt. Anne Boleyn had actually composed an entirely different final address, one that would have challenged her unjust confinement and stressed her steadfast faith and blamelessness. She was prevented from delivering it. Tudor customs required that those facing execution avoid public declarations that might stir public unrest or question the ruler's decisions. William Kingston, the Tower's commanding officer, documented Anne's mental sharpness during her last days, writing to Secretary Thomas Cromwell, "This morning she summoned me. She expressed desire to speak certain words, but would not displease His Majesty." Clearly, Anne comprehended her situation. She remained under surveillance and restriction until her final breath. The execution platform served not as a venue for justice, but as a tool of authority. Her enforced silence, rather than voluntary quiet, demonstrates how her death functioned not merely as punishment, but as orchestrated theater for royal legitimacy. Henry VIII demanded not simply Anne's destruction, but her cooperation in the process. Anne Boleyn's final hours were staged to protect the monarchy's reputation. The reality of her private thoughts, presumably suppressed by royal authorities, lies hidden beneath her composed public display. Her unspoken words may resonate more powerfully throughout history than her actual speech. The French executioner represented a foreign blade for an English sovereign. What motivated an English monarch to import a foreign headsman to kill his queen? Anne Boleyn's death on May 19, 1536, created an unusual moment in English chronicles, remarkable not only for the unprecedented destruction of a reigning queen, but for bringing a foreign swordsman to carry out her sentence. Rather than the customary English axe, Henry VIII organized a French-style beheading by blade. This choice was not driven purely by compassion. It carried symbolic weight, careful planning, and significant political implications. The headsman, whose identity remains unrecorded in official chronicles, but frequently referenced in historical sources as Jean Rambaud, was brought from Calais, then under English dominion. He was recognized as an expert swordsman skilled in the quick, accurate technique of beheading by blade, a practice employed in France for aristocratic executions. Henry VIII's decision to summon him to London was remarkable. In Tudor England, beheadings typically employed axes, and many proved gruesome affairs. The axe provided neither speed nor cleanliness. Failed executions occurred regularly. Selecting the sword conveyed a purposeful statement. Henry intended to present Anne's death as honorable, almost refined, at least superficially. Yet underneath this facade lay calculated strategy. Anne faced accusations of infidelity with 5 individuals, including her own sibling. She had received condemnation as a betrayer. However, by selecting the sword, Henry could separate himself from the savagery and project generosity. He could seem compassionate, even while commanding the death of the woman for whom he had previously dismantled an entire religious institution. Contemporary records indicate Anne understood the unusual preparation. According to Sir William Kingston, the Tower's commanding officer, Anne commented before her execution, "I understand the executioner possesses great skill, and my neck is slender." Her statement, marked by dark humor, reveals her keen understanding of the performance unfolding around her. Records also show that upon kneeling at the scaffold, She glanced around anxiously and inquired, "Should I offer my prayers at this moment?" Possibly uncertain when the final strike would occur, the executioner received substantial payment. Royal documents show he earned £23 and 6 shillings, a significant amount, exceeding many nobles' annual income. He had been rehearsing in the Tower's courtyard for days preceding the execution, perfecting his technique for accuracy. Bringing a French executioner represented more than merciful consideration. It constituted a symbolic action designed to cleanse Anne Boleyn's death of its brutal reality. It disguised a political murder as sophisticated procedure. Though the weapon was foreign, the underlying reasons remained distinctly English. The day of execution brought the swift yet deliberate conclusion of a queen's life. Dawn broke early on May 19, 1536, above the Tower of London, spreading dim illumination across the grass area north of the White Tower. Anne Boleyn, England's queen, had passed her remaining hours in the Queen's chambers, previously luxuriously decorated, now stark and quiet. She had awakened before sunrise, acknowledged her transgressions, received communion, and waited. The execution had already faced one postponement. On May 18th, Anne had prepared for death only to learn of the delay. Sources, including Sir William Kingston, the Tower's commanding officer, noted her distress and nervousness, observing that she appeared ready to perish by midday. When no official arrived, she erupted in anxious laughter. The postponement represented psychological torture, not practical requirements. Each additional hour heightened the strain, amplifying the dramatic spectacle. Shortly before 9:30 in the morning on May 19th, Anne was led to the scaffold within the Tower's central courtyard. She dressed in a gray damask dress over a red undergarment, the crimson representing martyrdom in Catholic symbolism. Her head covering was plain, her hair secured to reveal her neck. Surrounding her stood a small, carefully chosen group of nobles, administrators, and select civilians. The general public remained excluded. This was intended not as a disorderly event, but as a managed execution of royalty. She climbed the scaffold with self-control. Eyewitness testimonies describe her grace and the accepting nobility in her bearing. She spoke to the assembly with composure. "Good Christian people, I have arrived here to perish, for by the law and through the law I face judgment of death. I beseech God to preserve the king and grant him lengthy reign over you, for no kinder nor more compassionate ruler ever existed." Significantly, she offered no claims of innocence. This was anticipated. Condemned traitors were required to yield humbly. Publicly declaring her innocence might have appeared as a final rebellious gesture. She then knelt, covered her eyes, and prayed to Jesus Christ, "I entrust my spirit. Lord Jesus, accept my spirit." Her attendants wept softly beside her. The executioner, blade hidden behind him, assumed his position. According to chronicler Lancelot de Carles, the French swordsman requested the weapon from an assistant, causing Anne to turn her head instinctively. The executioner advanced and fulfilled the sentence. Only the sound of fabric and suppressed weeping followed. Anne perished in fewer than 45 seconds. Her body was placed in an available arrow box and interred in the adjacent chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula. No formal ceremony, no royal funeral procession, only silence and urgency. Her execution proceeded with terrifying efficiency, not as justice served, but as political ceremony. Every aspect of that day was controlled, scheduled, and arranged for impact. The Queen's death was rapid, yet never compassionate. It was deliberate. Anne Boleyn's execution transcended mere royal catastrophe. It demonstrated how terror sharpens authority's weapon. In destroying one existence, Henry VIII reshaped the crown and proved that even royal positions crumble when ambition overrides morality. History teaches that no status ensures compassion when politics requires sacrifice. Even now, her destiny reminds us that the boundary between triumph and destruction can be severed with one blow. Does her peaceful submission demonstrate internal strength or strategic requirement? Share your perspective in the comments. As observers recorded, she murmured, "To Jesus Christ I entrust my spirit. Lord Jesus, accept my spirit."